So question one, that's a couple of just introductory questions. Looking at what we talked about on Sunday with the Mother's Day sermon, what is one thing you are thankful for regarding your mother? What's one way God worked in your life and your family through your mother? What would you say?
My mom was a prayer warrior.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I think I got my love for doing Sunday school from my mom. I can remember her on Saturdays just working on her lesson. And she always did some interesting, she always had flannel graph for us, and she did other interesting things too. And she would say that one of her Sunday school teachers did the same. So, but yeah, I think that's where I get my love of teaching Sunday school from.
My mom was so positive, and she just loved everybody, no matter who they were. You know, I just saw that example. She was just so kind and loving. Yeah, she'd always read little visits with God every night. Sit between. We had twin beds and sit between us, and I've got that, and it's. That book, and it's just so fun to read. It's definitely 1950s, but still, really good lessons in there.
My kind of summary thought was she loved Jesus and she loved us. And that, the one thing that gets talked about sometimes, and I can't remember how we know this, how this was ever, it came to our attention as kids, because she would never have said it, and I don't know if my dad would have, but that she had made a commitment that her and my dad would never argue in front of us kids. And we can't remember that ever happening. And I know that wasn't because of my dad. he would have argued in front of us. But that was something that she thought was important. And she just made sure that was never in front of us. So, yeah.
Well, I'm thankful for my parents bringing me to church.
Yes.
Letting me get to know Jesus Christ. Because I look back and I think, that wouldn't have happened, what would I have been turned out to be? Because you got many times, and really, you did such a good job. But when I went in the Army, right out of high school, I still went to church. And that was a good opportunity to just take off. So I'm really thankful for that.
And it is something to be thankful for, because that is not the case for everybody. That's not something to take for granted, that's the way it was. So something to be thankful for. What about question 2? Were you surprised at the results of the survey mentioned on Sunday that less than 1 in 5 moms say they regularly feel they are able to contribute meaningfully to the world? Do you agree with the majority opinion? Do you understand why they felt that way? Do you have other thoughts to explain their opinion? Was that surprising? What do you think?
I'd have more questions. How old were these women that they were surveying?
And I don't remember what the details were of the survey. I would guess, moms with kids at home, but I don't know, what kind of range it would have been.
Because I just think of that as being just 180 degrees from my mom.
Oh.
She just felt like motherhood was the most important thing in the world. And she took it very
Yeah.
seriously.
Yeah, that's interesting that you bring that up. Because I think that this, this does, one of the things that it seems to me to say is culture has changed.
Yes, I think so.
That it wouldn't have been that way.
Right.
You think if that number would have been higher, that there would have been
Yes,
Yeah.
they
3 out of 5 or 4 out of 5.
Yeah, that was important.
Yeah.
But the thing is, they're saying contribute to the world.
I know.
You have the men take the same breath.
Yeah.
What did I do for the United Nations? Or what did I do?
Yeah, right.
So you wonder.
That's
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
How you word it.
Take that word world. And
Right.
really say,
Yeah.
well, that's the big one.
Yeah, and if they're thinking in those terms,
Yeah.
I would
Yeah.
say no too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's all a matter of.
Yeah.
How you look at it.
Yeah.
So maybe use the word family, contribute to the family.
Yeah.
Well,
But this
but
is the
again,
world. This is the
it
question.
does,
Is the world.
Say the culture has changed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is. Yeah. And
Because
right.
the generations before would have thought,
Mhm.
being a mom
Contributes
is
to the
contributing to the
Yeah,
world.
that's true.
It does.
I don't know if this expression is still alive, but the hand that rocks the cradle rules the world.
Yeah, I hadn't thought about that.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what I was brought up with.
Yeah, and that would have been much more common, and now that's kind of lost. Yeah.
There, I don't know where I just read it, but maybe it was that book that Kramer's gave me about how there's just the women nowadays, so many women are completely putting off having a family because it would slow down their career.
It's also very expensive.
To have a kid, yeah.
It is, but
we had 2 out in Reba.
Yeah. You can thrift, you can nurse, you can, there are a lot of ways to save money, share.
And God takes care of you too.
Exactly.
It's amazing.
And the kids don't have to have anything fancy.
Right.
Right. But they think they do, Linda. Yeah. And
well, they just said on the news this week that it costs $35,000 for childcare.
Oh, that's childcare is expensive. Yeah.
And so
if they want to keep working with that career, and then they have to do childcare.
Right.
Well, and I would guess that 50% of the women in the world probably quote unquote have to work in order
but if they're paying that much for childcare,
they
can live off of that.
I thought it was real high. I don't think that that's
I
don't think that that's the local
right
probably in New York City or
you're talking about they're hiring a nanny for $35,000 and probably getting a housekeeper with that too.
Usually if grandma's around, she's not that expensive.
No.
But again, that's part of the culture. You don't have the family.
Away from the family. Yeah,
that's right.
It's true.
And some women work because they want to work, but other women work because they have to work.
And I think there's a chunk of those people who work because they think they have to work. That's our culture. That's what they're told. That's what's ingrained in them.
You're wasting your life if you.
And they have, or just that
you need this and you need that.
And even just, they're told a husband and wife cannot make ends meet unless both of them are working full time. That's what they're told. And they just think that's what they have to do without really looking at, are there any other options and possibilities? It's just our culture. It affects everything. So, well, let's look at the other side to the story. Some of the things that we can see from scripture about the influence of a mom. So let's read these passages first of all. The example from the life of Timothy. So Acts 16 verses 1 through 5, first of all.
So Timothy joins Paul and Silas. Paul came also to Derbe and Lystra. A disciple was there named Timothy, the son of a Jewish woman who was a believer, but his father was a Greek. He was well spoken of by the brothers at Lystra and Iconium. Paul wanted Timothy to accompany him, And he took him and circumcised him because of the Jews who were in those places, for they all knew that his father was a Greek. As they went on their way through the cities, they delivered to them for observance the decisions that had been reached by the apostles and elders who were in Jerusalem. So the churches were strengthened in the faith, and they increased in numbers daily.
Thank you. And then let's go ahead and read the other two passages too. So 2 Timothy 1, 3 through 5.
I thank God, whom I serve, as my forefather did, with a clear conscience, as night and day. I constantly remember you in my prayers, recalling your tears. I long to see you, that I may be filled with joy. I have been reminded of your sincere faith, which first lived in your grandmother Lois, and in your mother Eunice, and I am persuaded now lives in you also. Or that's it.
Yep, that was verse 5. And then chapter 3, 2 Timothy 3, verses 14 and 15.
You, however, continue in the things you have learned and become convinced of, knowing from whom you have learned them, and that from childhood you have were given the sacred writings, which are able to give you the wisdom that leads to salvation through faith which is in Christ Jesus.
All right, thanks. So just kind of a broader beginning question. What comments, questions, thoughts do you have regarding the influence of a mother based on Timothy's example? Things that you remember from Sunday or things you see from the text that just kind of overall comments, questions, thoughts.
You know, like the one I read about Timothy, it says, I have been reminded of your sincere faith, which first lived in your grandma Lois and your mother Eunice.
That heritage.
So that, you know, if you don't have parents that have faith, there's a good chance that you'll never know Jesus or whatever, you know.
It's hard, yeah. 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 What a difference it made here.
Yeah.
To have that grandmother and then the mother, and then there's Timothy. Yeah. Any other comments, questions, thoughts, looking at those texts?
That she instilled in him the word from a young age.
Yes. Yeah. And how important that, you know, that's where it all came from. You know, Paul really isn't giving credit to Timothy or Lois or Eunice. He's giving credit to God. Through God's word, God worked that faith in Timothy's heart and changed him and brought about all that happened to him. But, you know, it was through his grandmother and mother that word came to him.
Question, what would have been the overall education process for Timothy back then?
Yeah, and we don't know for sure. You know, the thing about that passage, it talks about, you know, the ESV has from childhood, but more literally it's from infancy. And so the picture would have been, and that would have been normal in a Jewish home, that the parents and here the mother would have taught him. I mean, that's how he would have learned to read. That's how he would have learned to talk. Even would have been hearing the scriptures.
Would have been a homeschooling type of process.
Well, it's hard to know how much to compare that to, because, you know, this was from infancy.
Day to day.
So, you know, just the whole childhood that would have been going on. And in a, you know, like if it was in Jerusalem, where there was a synagogue on every corner, and the temple was there, and the teachers were there, and there would have been, you know, when that child got to be, and I don't know for sure, 5, maybe 6, more likely somewhere in there, at some point along there, they would have started to go to school at the synagogue and be taught by others besides the parents.
But his father was Greek. Would he have been allowed to go? Or?
Right. And so, and we don't know. We know in Lystra, when Paul came, there was a synagogue there that he spoke in. But, you know, 15 years earlier, Would there have been? You know, it didn't take very many to make a synagogue. And so if there wasn't a synagogue, or if, you know, the synagogue was located somewhere or it's hard to get to, or if the father objected, then it would have been in the home that the education came. And, you know, the thing we don't know is, would his father have gotten him into some kind of Greek education program? We don't know.
Yeah, I'm just wondering too, you know, does it talk about how, was it Eunice, did she hear Paul the first time, and then she basically said, yes, I believe that Christ is the Messiah, so that there was a conversion experience, if you will, from the Jewish to the Christian. And then ultimately that must have translated to Timothy somehow.
You know, we don't know for sure. Yes, there was that kind of conversion experience from the Jewish faith to Christianity. But, I mean, I almost have the impression that Lois and Eunice and Timothy all would have heard Paul preach, and all would have responded to the message.
Yeah.
So we don't know for sure.
But they were all on the same wavelength.
Yes.
Yeah.
They would have all been, the impression is they were all on the same wavelength. Yes. Yeah. So.
Would it have been unusual for the grandmother and the mother to have been doing the religious teaching in the home? If they would have had a Jewish father, wouldn't have that been more what he would have done?
Probably to some degree anyway, but the from infancy part of it probably meant the mother and the grandmother would have been more involved to start with. You know, in that kind of preschool time, they would have been primary then. But yeah, when he got older, like say, you know, 6, 7, when he normally would have started going to the synagogue, if that wasn't available, but there was a Jewish father, then probably the father would have been more involved in that part of it. Yeah. So, question 4, based on Acts 16 verses 1 and 3, we think that the situation in Timothy's home would not have been ideal. What would you imagine that would have been like for Timothy's mother? Have you seen similar situations, and what can mother do in such situations? So what's the issue in verses 1 and 3?
The father was a Greek.
Father was a Greek. Says it twice. So what would you imagine that would have been like for Timothy's mother?
Married to a non-believer.
Yes, and you know, it doesn't ever say, but the implication seems to be that the father was not a believer. If he had been, you know, the circumcision part would have happened probably, and probably Paul would have said something about his influence if he'd been a believer, but he doesn't at all. And so an unbelieving Gentile in the home as the father. Other thoughts about what that would have been like?
I think God has made the Greek father passive.
Well, could be. Yeah.
I mean, he controlled the whole situation. Let's face it. He
picked
Timothy and
so
you know.
Yeah, it's and we just don't know a lot. So you're using your imagination to some degree, but other thoughts.
The father could have been converted to Christianity. Isn't that who Paul ministered to? Peter to the Jews and Paul more to the Greeks.
Yes.
But not in infancy. I mean, right. I'm saying Paul was there and they were mentioning about the circumcision, so that Timothy would, you know, kind of fit in.
Yeah. And again,
I don't know.
We don't know.
Maybe.
Many speculate that the father probably had died by the time Paul showed up.
Okay, yeah.
Because he's never mentioned. And, you know, 40 years old maybe at that point. The life expectancy wasn't really longer than that at that point. So it wouldn't have been surprising if he had passed away.
So it wouldn't have been as difficult then for Timothy.
At that point, yes. So, but growing up, it seems like he was around. So
I was just wondering how women were educated in the Jewish faith as opposed to men. The boys went to learn the Torah, and they did women too.
The women would have been educated, relatively speaking, fairly well.
Okay.
Because, you know, they were part of the family of God.
Okay.
They needed to know God's word.
Yeah.
They would have learned how to read, to write,
yeah,
you know. And so of, you know, that culture, the Jewish women probably were better off.
Oh, okay.
Than a lot of women might. I mean, you know, there would have been upper class women who were educated too. But
I was just thinking the boys went to synagogue to be educated, but maybe the women did and they sat on the separate side of the church.
And you know, I wonder if the women would have been educated more in the home.
Okay, yeah. But they pretty much got the same
would
Jewish
have,
background.
you know,
Okay.
they wanted them to be able to know God's word.
Yeah, and they did apparently. So
So
okay.
Yeah. Have you seen similar situations in your life where you had a mom who was a believer and a dad who was not? Are there things that come to your mind?
Remember the first church we served, there was a gal about my age who was a newer Christian, and her husband, we prayed for him for years. She came alone with the kids to church. And he never relented. Even to this day, he
really?
It's so sad.
So, you know, I think about it, and I don't know, I mean, this doesn't fit this exactly, but I think about Margie LeDoux.
Yeah.
In the first church we served.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's hard to know where her husband really was at because
he did come sometimes.
But it was very rare.
Yeah.
And he had a background in Christianity, but something had happened in the church they were in that just completely turned him off from the church. And, you know, he didn't want to have anything to do with it. And, you know, she came, she brought the kids, and, you know, very rarely he would show up if the kids were involved in something, but you know, that he didn't want to have it, he didn't want to talk about it, you know. So
I have a brother-in-law too that he's a policeman. And he saw the other side of the clergy.
Sure.
He just said I couldn't listen to a sermon anymore.
Well, look with me at that passage, 1 Peter chapter 3, verses 1 and 2. You know, what can a mother do in such situations? 1 Peter 3, Peter says, likewise, wives, be subject to your own husbands, so that even if some do not obey the word, they may be won without a word by the conduct of their wives, when they see your respectful and pure conduct. And, you know, it goes on to more as well. But, you know, and I think that was how Margie approached things.
Yeah.
You know, she would never say anything bad about her husband, you know. And, you know, genuinely loved him and appreciated him. And I think he changed after we left.
Okay.
And, you know, started going back to church, and, you know, I think they're in a good place now.
That's good.
But it was a lot, you know, many years. So yeah. And I just, you know, I wonder if that was what it was like for Eunice with Timothy, that she, you know, we don't know how it ended up. She married this Gentile. You know, were there just no Jewish men around? It's possible, you know, and here's this nice Greek guy that's going to take care of you, and you can have a family. I don't know. Or was she the rebellious Jewish girl?
She thought she could convert him. So
we don't know, but yeah. Well, what about question 5? What are things that Timothy's mother would have taught him, and how would she have influenced him from the Old Testament so that he was ready to receive the gospel when Paul first proclaimed it to them? What do you think? What would be some of the things that Timothy's mother would have taught him?
Probably the 10 Commandments.
Yeah.
The stories in Genesis,
Mm-hmm.
Abraham and Noah, and
Yeah.
Moses and Exodus.
Yeah.
The promise of a Messiah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you would have God's law, you know, the truth, the directions, the instructions. You'd have the whole history. That would have been something they taught him. And then the prophecies, the promises. There's a Messiah that's coming that we're waiting for. And it really seems like those things must have been things that they knew and focused on. Anything else that you think of as you think about the Old Testament, you know, the Jewish religion from that time period, anything else that they would have taught Timothy?
I wonder if they would have talked about the sacrifice system. Because you had to do that in Jerusalem.
Right.
So they wouldn't have.
Yeah, we don't know that they would have gone there.
And that would have been so far.
Yes, especially by themselves, not with the Father.
You think they would have talked about that?
Yeah.
Because the whole sacrificing Isaac thing, you know, that was such a big part of those old stories, Old Testament stories. And why would you do that? Well,
but you know, I think that piece too is important because I think that would have been their personal spiritual life, and that's what they would have taught Timothy. You know, that we're sinners, that when we sin, we deserve God's judgment. We are to confess our sins and ask him for forgiveness. And, you know, we can't go and sacrifice, but, you know, that's what is in our hearts. That's what we want to do. And so we believe God's promises that he says he'll forgive us. You know, they would have lived that out, I think. And so, you know, Paul comes and says, hey, I have good news for you. The Messiah has come. Jesus lived and died and rose again. He is the one that was promised. And, you know, God, you know, worked in their hearts and eyes were opened and they said, yes.
You wonder if they would have heard about Jesus at all.
I don't know that they would have. This is far enough away.
But there were people that traveled through there. And you wonder if some of the stories about this person who could do these miracles.
It's possible. But
because I just think it would have been hard for people to just have believed this man.
Yeah, it would have. But again, I think, you know, these were people who were ready. You know, they believed. They believed in God. They believed all of the Old Testament. They were trusting God for his grace and forgiveness. And you know, the prophecies, they would have been aware of that.
Well, and I also think that when Paul and others who were missionaries, they spoke with such authority. There's something to be said about someone who can preach with God's authority and anointment. And knowing how God's word is going to work in a person's heart at that point. Too.
And of course the work of the Holy Spirit.
But
it just is kind of a miracle.
It is.
Well, the whole spreading of the church.
It is. You know, it reminded me of 1 Thessalonians 2, verse 13. It says that we thank God constantly for this, that when you received the word of God, which you heard from us, you accepted it, not as the word of men, but as what it really is, the word of God, which is at work in you who believe. You know, and that's what God did. They heard it, and this was God speaking to them.
I wonder too if they're in a Jewish settlement that's way out in the periphery, they're doing this because they want to do it spiritually.
Yeah,
It's not a tradition and a culture,
sure.
which could be the case in
Yeah.
some, you know, and a lot of times in some religions,
Yeah.
people are just there because that's the way everybody else is.
Yeah,
And they probably had to really be dedicated
Yeah.
to the spiritual dimension of that
Yeah.
faith.
yeah,
The Holy Spirit's working in it.
yes, yes,
You know, I think of Cornelius, who was
yeah,
a
Gentile.
Yeah, Gentile. And he'd been praying to God
Yes,
every
yes.
day and,
Yeah,
you know, doing all this stuff.
yeah,
And so there were definitely people that were ready to
Yes.
hear.
yeah. So question 6, getting to the mother's influence, imagine what it would have been like for Timothy's mother to encourage him to go with Paul on his missionary journey. What would that have involved?
She might not ever see him again.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah.
Especially knowing that Paul was sought after by religious leaders in the
Yeah,
Romans.
they were enemies.
They were enemies.
Yeah,
I mean, if Paul dies, there was a good chance Timothy was going to die.
Right, right.
and I think it's so interesting, you know, that, you know, Timothy's in Lystra, but I think it's Derby. One of the next towns, you know, right next door is where Paul was stoned to death.
Stoned and left for dead.
And they would have known that,
Yeah.
Yeah.
you know, that was what he was getting into. So
So they must have heard of Paul then, right?
Yeah, they must
Before
have.
he arrived, if
I
because
can't remember
Derby
the
was so
order
close.
of
Yeah.
the travels, because that
Yeah.
was on the first missionary journey.
Okay. Yeah.
And so now he's coming back
Right.
through the second time.
Yeah.
So,
Okay.
yeah, but.
Hmm.
And is that a challenge for mothers in our setting today? Thinking about sending off a child.
Oh,
It
yeah.
was hard to see Marley and Kyle leave for Hawaii.
Mhm.
I can still see us standing outside of a pizza ranch,
Mhm.
saying goodbye
Mhm.
and wondering when we would
When
see
you
them
would see
again.
them again.
And they weren't, well, they were, I mean, they weren't going into any
Yeah.
danger.
Unless you call surfing dangerous.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Or
you know,
Oregon may be a different story.
we feel bad, you know, and it's hard to see somebody go like that, but you know, we're going and sending them into a good situation.
Great. Where
You know?
some are just
Yeah.
so dangerous.
Yes.
Oh,
Yeah.
Yeah, they might send them off to Iran.
Well, yeah, sending a child off anywhere.
Well, you send them off to college.
Yeah.
College is probably the worst.
And then after that, they go to work. And in my case, I got one in Milwaukee, one in Texas,
Scattered.
one in Albuquerque, New Mexico.
Yeah.
That's my children and grandchildren are all there.
But I would think it would have been almost like saying, they're gonna send you off to Iran. You know, be given the dangers that were out there and there. I don't know when did they pass the Roman law about
you know, it would have been probably 10 years after this.
okay, so they hadn't really laid down the gauntlet.
But that was coming.
Yeah.
You know,
They could probably see the writing and then,
you know, so, but, you know, let him go. And he went. So how would you summarize the influence of Timothy's mother when you consider the ministry Timothy ended up being involved in as recorded in the New Testament? You know, just thinking about what, you know, that he traveled with Paul, finished his second missionary journey, did his third missionary journey, went with him to Jerusalem and was with him in Rome. You know, what do you think of the influence of that mother when you think about what Timothy's life ended up being?
well, she pointed him in the right direction.
Yeah.
She had a good godly influence on him.
She had to have trusted Paul too.
Yeah.
And saw maybe that spiritual father in him that he didn't have.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It kind of goes with that. 1 Thessalonians 3:2 and 3. Paul says, we sent Timothy, our brother and God's co-worker in the gospel of Christ, to establish and exhort you in the faith, that no one be moved by those afflictions. And then that passage in Philippians, which, you know, is even stronger, Philippians 2:19-22, Paul writes, I hope in the Lord Jesus to send Timothy to you soon, so that I too may be cheered by news of you, for I have no one like him who will be genuinely concerned for your welfare. For they all seek their own interests, not those of Jesus Christ. But you know Timothy's proven worth, how as a son with a father he has served with me in the gospel. Yeah.
In many ways, Paul was his father.
Yes, spiritually.
Spiritually.
He was, for sure. Yeah.
Timothy was pretty young too, right? I mean,
we don't know for sure, but you know, maybe 20 when he went with Paul.
Yeah, which is kind of, which is young.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Paul was what, 40, 45?
Maybe 50 by this time.
Quite a bit of difference in age.
Yeah, because there was a chunk of time from his conversion
to
the journeys.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Yeah.
Oh.
So.
I believe that. So I need to know how to say this. I believe that children born into families where there is no God generally have an opportunity to cross paths with someone who will love them as if they were their own. And I base that on the teaching in Psalm 27, where it talks about my father and mother reject me and the Lord takes me up, and it talks about setting the lonely in families.
Yeah.
But I just really believe that. I've seen that multiple times over as a teacher, seen where a child doesn't have what they need in their home, and someone outside the family, someone in a church, someone in a work situation, takes on the mentoring that goes into helping that child become who they're meant to be.
Hopefully that's something we, you know, take away from this is, you know, you think about Timothy and the influence that he had, you know, in God's plan for the world. I mean, he was part of turning the world upside down, changing the world, you know, through the influence of his mom, you know, just raising her kid to know Jesus, you know. But, you know, what opportunities do we have to influence people around us? What, you know, are there people that God has us cross paths with that he would like us to be a part of the influence that is needed for that person?
And that goes right back to your statistic.
Well, yeah, yes.
Because if we
changes the world.
If we think or believe that we can make an impact, we're going to see that child or that person that needs that influence.
Yeah.
And that God will lead us to that person.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's a good reminder. So question 8, what are some of the things that you think that would have been included in the sincere faith of Timothy and Lois and Eunice? What is that talking about? That sincere faith, Paul says, was in Timothy, and he saw first in Lois and Eunice. What does a sincere faith include?
Well, they trusted God in all things and prayed.
Again, I think prayer would have been a big.
Yeah.
I think the Holy Spirit.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. That's the only way we have sincere faith, from the work of the Spirit.
Oh, and we're hypocritical either.
Yes. I think that's a huge part of that word sincere, is that idea is there. Not hypocritical, not putting on a mask, not putting on a show. It was genuine, it was real. Yeah.
And it sounded like Timothy had a heart for others too, that he was thinking of them. And so he loved God and loved his neighbor.
Yeah.
So he kind of fulfilled what it's all about, I guess.
Yeah,
Otherwise, he never would have gone with Paul.
right, right,
If he hadn't had those,
yeah,
he never would have gone with Paul.
yeah, yeah. And, I think that, that idea, sincere faith includes the idea that it's a faith that is lived out and shows in our life and how we live. If it's sincere, that will happen. Yeah. So what about question 9? So we think about our culture, and we talked about the challenges for families and maybe especially for mothers in our culture today. What are resources that you're aware of that could help a mother to positively influence her child to have a sincere faith? Are there things that you think of that are available, that there's help, there's resources out there that can help?
Bible studies, the church.
Yeah.
Yes, yeah, and that's hopefully a huge thing, is that connection with the congregation, and all that's there is certainly, hopefully, help to a mother in that situation.
I think of health resources and
I know.
how much
Yeah.
they have
Yeah.
available that moms can take advantage of.
Yeah, so many of the situations, people that they're dealing with are people who, don't have the background, or don't have a husband that's supportive, or not married at all, or those kinds of situations. And it's can be absolutely overwhelming. And so to have that resource where there's connections, there's help, there's teaching, connections.
Focus on the family too, has so many good speakers and resources and many radio programs on Christian radio.
But there are organizations that have all kinds of things that are available. Yeah.
Even the moms that send their kids to BBS.
Yeah.
For some kids, that's probably the only church they've ever been in. Really.
And then when the family comes to the program, they get to hear that word of God speak too. So.
Yeah. What about question 10? And this is really kind of the heart of what we've been talking about with the change in culture. A recent magazine article was titled "How Millennials Learned to Dread Motherhood." To our generation, and this is what they said, to our generation, being a mom looks thankless, exhausting, and lonely. Have you encountered that kind of thinking? And what would be some healthy responses to that perspective?
What's that acronym? Did you mention that? 2 incomes, no kids, and
what
is it? Dink, yeah.
Yes.
Double
income, no kids.
Double income, no kids, yeah.
That's a school of thought, a movement that's out there that's like, hey, we're on top of the world. We're both working, don't have any kids.
Exactly.
And that's one of the things.
Until they age.
And then they're alone.
And then they're alone.
Except for their dogs and all the hair.
Yeah.
Really, I mean.
But it seems like the culture becomes earth worshipers. They look at anything that'll consume resources.
Their carbon footprint
and they start building that around the number of people. And you just have to, I think, counter it with that God wants us to, what we have to be part of what God wants us to be. I still love the analogy, we just have to read the owner's manual. That's how we were designed. And we're designed to have children. We're designed to be married. And we're starting to hear it now too, where some famous people are saying, just like you said, the best way to grow and mature and to become a better person is to have a family. And even in terms of practical terms, you're quoting the statistics.
Yeah,
you
it's
know,
better.
how they're happier,
Yeah.
they feel like they've done something.
Yeah,
You know, and
yeah,
it's just a false narrative
yeah.
that they're giving, that here the earth is to be here by itself. We were,
Right,
you know, we were put
right.
on this earth, you know,
Earth
read
was made
Genesis.
for-
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. You know, a couple of things I think about with that. One is, you know, to think about, you know, the thought so often in people's minds today is that extra person is a problem. You know, that person you're adding to the total is adding to the problem. And that's exactly the opposite of what it should be. You know, how is any problem going to be solved?
People.
That kid that you should have had was the one that could have figured out how to do this.
Yes.
Right.
You
And
know?
we can figure out how to do it now if we just let them do it.
Right, right. You know, that we are not the problem, we're part of the solution.
Yeah.
We're the ones that can figure this out. That's what God put us here for.
Yeah.
Kids
You know,
are
so
our best
that
resource.
aspect of it.
Yeah.
And then, you know, just for people to kind of wake up and recognize, and for us, you know, to make sure that we don't get pulled into that mindset of the world. This is a quote from Katie Faust. I don't know if you're familiar with her. One of the books she's written, it's called Them Before Us, talking about children. You know, we should think of them before us. But this is the quote. Are you afraid for our nation? Buy a house, plant a garden, get married, have lots of babies, help your children marry well, be great grandparents. That's the solution. You know, she says, we don't have to run an office, start a podcast, or lead a think tank. The most powerful and countercultural work happens in your home. You know, and to be able to switch the mindset to say, this is where things happen. This is where good happens, not, oh, what a problem this is.
You know, that's something we talked about in planning baby showers. How we want our kids in church to see us celebrating babies. And, you know, just to make that whole process something that's desirable and a good thing.
And you know, we need to be honest and realistic. You know, this world is a tough place, and there are no guarantees, and it isn't easy. You know, that is exactly
exhausting.
Yeah, it is. It is.
And sometimes lonely.
It's hard to be a parent, and it's hard to be a mom, and those are real things. But this is what God designed us for, you know, and so we need to make sure that we don't lose that.
And they're saying it looks thankless, and but they're looking at someone that is raising. I mean, when they're your own, you love them to death, so you're willing to get up in the middle of the night, and you're willing to, you know, give up that coffee party.
Marley and Kyle, they're prime examples of this, because they've seen Josh and Katie, you know, with all four of their kids getting up at night, having sick kids, and they just see the exhaustion, and they just don't know if they can handle that. And we try to tell them it's so, and I remember people telling me that too. And I just didn't get it until
you have your own. Yeah.
And so and we've told them that too, and we've told them all kinds of things. So they get bombarded, but
it's God's grace. He gives you what you need when you need it. And you just got that love in your heart that you just can't imagine till it, you know, till till you have children. But, and the other thing is the culture, again, like you're saying, has changed. People are away from their families who can help,
It's
you know,
hard.
with that, you know.
Yeah.
it's
And
just-
that will be Kyle.
yeah, it's just much harder, you know.
Yeah.
And then the loneliness, a lot of people do work before kids and then they miss those friendships
Sure.
from work. But if they can
Mhm.
connect with
Yeah.
other moms
Right.
and have play groups and,
Yeah.
you know, just connect, they have to make an effort.
Right.
Yeah.
But it's
yeah.
exhausting.
Yes.
So,
Yeah.
but yeah.
I just thought it was so interesting how when you were a kid and, you know, a teen, a young adult, you know, doing certain things were so fun, but after a
Mhm.
while, it got
Mhm.
boring.
Right.
Then you had kids,
And
and then all those things that were boring are exciting again.
Yeah.
Because you see it through your kids.
Nice.
And then your kids grew up and it's all boring again.
Yeah.
Then you have grandkids.
Again, yeah. Isn't that funny?
It's funny how
Yeah.
each
Yeah.
time
Yeah. Yeah.
the world gets fresh and new
Yeah.
again.
Yeah. Which is so neat. Yeah.
I think we're in a culture too where there's a desire for instant gratification.
Yes.
And that
Yes.
when you're in the midst of
Yeah.
thankless, exhausted,
Yeah.
and lonely, there's no
Mhm.
instant gratification. You might feel that tenderness periodically
Yeah.
in the middle of the night.
Yeah.
But the gratification comes
Yeah.
later when you see your kids growing and
Yeah.
serving in the church
Or
and
with
loving
their
the Lord.
sleeping,
Mhm.
or-
But that is a huge obstacle.
It is.
In the culture, because that's how they've grown up
Yeah.
and that's
Mhm.
what the culture's taught.
Well, and
them.
there's so much
Yeah.
me culture all the
Oh,
time
yeah.
now, where
Yeah.
the concept of serving someone else isn't even there.
Right. Right. It is a big challenge in our world. So let's pray.
Everything is a need now, not a luxury.
Right, yeah, that's a big part of it too. Yeah.
I deserve that, because I need it.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah. Yeah.
that's kind of the way they're brought up. you know.
Yes, yeah,
But
yeah. Well, let's pray. Heavenly Father, thank you for moms. Lord, I think about the moms of kids in our church. And I pray that you would come close to them, help them to know your love for them, help them to sense your strength and grace, give them a sense of what an amazing work they are involved in doing just by being moms. Lord, be with families that are struggling, dealing with very difficult things. Lord, help them to look to you, help them to hold on to you and hold on to one another. And Lord, help us to be a healthy and positive influence on those who are raising kids today. Help us to make a difference in our culture by interacting with those you put in front of us and that we can interact with today. Lord, thank you for being here. I pray that you would bless us as we go, and we pray in Jesus' name. Next Wednesday, we will look at, do a study based on the sermon on Sunday. Pastor Eric is preaching on Sunday. So there is no study guide yet, because I haven't heard the sermon. So, but that's what we'll do next week. And then 2 weeks from now, we will finish the book of Habakkuk. Do the best chapter of the book.
I have to read that.